everybody, and welcome to today's video. It is not going to be the most visually interesting video of mine that you've ever seen today, since we are talking about text adventure games, but I wanted to do it anyway because these games are really, really good, and they are very much worth your time. They're a highlight, in fact, of 2021 for me already, and that's saying a lot because 2021 has given me a lot of really good games to play already, but even then, these are really good, and I would hate for people to miss out on them because there's not too much footage of them out there because they don't make for the most interesting videos. We are talking about the Choices That Matter series, and it comes to us from developer-publisher Australia's own Tin Man Games. They have, over the last 3 months, brought all 3 Choices That Matter titles to Nintendo Switch. Originally they were mobile games and one of them was made available on PC, but now all 3 are available on the Switch. The first is subtitled And the Sun Went Out, the second is called And Their Souls Were Eaten, while the third is And Their Heroes Were Lost. All 3 of these games are self-contained and structurally the same as one another, so you can play them in any order or you can play one and miss one, whatever works for you. But I do think that anybody that enjoys a good story is going to want to get into all 3 of these, because they are all excellent, and because they are different you do get a good range of stories. I have got reviews of the first 2 on Nintendo Switch up on digitallydownloaded.net, and I will have a review of the third up later this week as well once I have had a chance to finish it. So I'm working my way through it. I'm not quite there yet. They're pretty long games, as we will get into. Anyway, what is it about these games that I find to be pretty special? There's a couple of things. Firstly, all 3 games adopt the choose your own adventure approach to gameplay, and I grew up with choose your own adventure books, so there is a bit of nostalgia there for me. In that, I mean that when you play these games, what you'll be doing is reading a chunk of text, and then you will be given one of 2 possible answers or actions to take next, and the decision that you make will naturally affect the way that the narrative flows on from there. Depending on the choices that you make, the narrative can actually spin out into some pretty drastically different directions, and hence this series' overarching title of Choices That Matter. Now, what makes these games so impressive is that they feature so many different choices. We are talking about dozens upon dozens of choices to make through the game, and those choices lead to some wildly different experiences of plot and what is going on within it. Because there are so many choices to make, it is impossible to game the system towards particular resolutions and outcomes, and therefore you'll let your own decision making and moral center dictate what you do, and therefore your protagonist will be a lot more authentic to who you are as a person than might be the case in many visual novels, where because you've only got a certain number of decisions to make throughout the course of it, you can tell the direction that the plot's going to go in kind of general terms when those decisions are in front of you, so you can aim and drive at a certain resolution right from the outset. You can't really do that in Choices That Matter, which means that the plot and the decision making within it is a lot more fluid and more responsive to who you are as a person. At the end of each chapter, you're actually told how many people also ended up in the spot that you have, and at this point note that the game doesn't really track how you responded to individual questions, but how the complex web of decisions that you made throughout that chapter has affected your story, and how many other people were affected in the same way. In some cases, I have finished a chapter to find that only 10-15% of people have answered and ended up in the same spot that I have. At other times, I guess I've been more mainstream in my decision making, and I've ended up in a group with 50, 60, even 70% of other players. Now, as somebody who writes their own visual novels, the logistics behind what has actually been done with these games, especially when they are as large as they are, and the biggest one is actually 2,400 odd decisions and over 600,000 words of text, the scale and the logistics of making all of that work cohesively really hurts my mind to comprehend, and the fact that they've woven together all of this so intricately and in a way that maintains continuity regardless of which decisions you make, it's truly impressive. It really is truly impressive storytelling in terms of non-linear and player-driven storytelling within a text adventure. But if it was just decisions for the sake of decisions, it would be one thing. What impresses me even more about the Choices That Matter series is that they're just so damn interesting in how they actually present those choices and the narrative that's kind of woven around them. So here's a rough overview of the concepts of all three of the games. And the Sun Went Out is a winding story about cults and conspiracies, ancient gods, and a sun that has a habit of going out at random. There's more than a hint of Lovecraftian horror and the kind of cosmic mythos implied in there through much of the adventure as well. Meanwhile, And Their Souls Were Eaten takes place in a steampunk 1830s Europe, where metal is magical and you are a soul eater with a monstrous bear as your companion. And in that you are trying to figure out why there's a group of people, another cult I guess in a way, that seems set on destroying all life within the world. Finally, the new one, at least on the Nintendo Switch, it was only released about a week or two ago, And Their Heroes Were Lost. This is the one I'm playing at the moment. In it you start out in the adventure with near total amnesia. You have no idea who you are, but you are chained up within a prison, and you have a desperate need to break out of this prison because it seems like a very unpleasant place indeed. And then you discover immediately after escaping that you have access to some kind of AI helper that's embedded directly within your brain, and that is just the start of the weirdness of this game. Like I said, I haven't finished this one, but in the same way that the other two are just these kind of compelling mysteries that drag you along, this one is doing exactly the same with me. We often talk about page turners in books. They're the kinds of books that are impossible to put down, not necessarily because they're written to the standard of the great works of literature, but rather because they have this riveting mastery over the rhythms and pacing of narrative, and the focus of them remains firmly on the excitement of the story that they're telling. These are stories that are so thoroughly entertaining that you want to read them quickly, as opposed to something that is of such a depth and intensity that it's something that you want to savor and never have end. So a narrative-driven game like Persona 4 or Trails of Cold Steel or Nier is the equivalent of something you want to savor and reflect on slowly as you play along. Meanwhile, games like these Choices That Matter titles, or something like Danganronpa, with their twists and turns and revelations and dangerous situations that suggest an urgency, these are games that are much more something that you want to power through and just let their energy wash over you. Both approaches to storytelling are of course equally valid, interesting and worthy of respect. Both are equally entertaining in their own ways. Choices That Matter deserves particular note for the way that they are able to paint the most vivid pictures of what's going on in the game. Much like the best books that you'll ever read, you would hate to see them actually visualized in some way, because they invite you to draw your own personal imagery and really take ownership over the experience via your imagination. This was something I had with Lord of the Rings many years ago. When the films were first announced, I almost didn't want to watch them because I had a very clear vision of what Lord of the Rings should be in my head thanks to those books. Of course, then I went along to the cinema and actually found that I really liked Peter Jackson's vision. It was different to mine in some ways, but I appreciated it for what it was. But there was that level of kind of nervous energy about whether the books and the film were going to clash in a way in my head that was going to be difficult to resolve. That Choices That Matter is also asking so many questions of you as you play along. It just makes the depth of the immersion that the series offers all the more potent, because you are just constantly being forced to respond to the narrative in a very energetic and kind of page-turner way that just draws you deeper and deeper and deeper within the story. So, to finish up, what you've seen in this video really is the extent of the game's visuals. There is one character per game, and it really is just an icon that pops up from time to time with a couple of little animations. The rest of the time you are spending the entire game looking at a font. Now, it's a very nice font, it's a very readable font, but it is just a font. But then again, that's all that Choices That Matter really needs, and I'm really glad to have had the opportunity to play through some real, genuine, bona fide text-based adventure games in 2021. This is a genre that, for very obvious reasons, has fallen by the wayside in mainstream gaming community and even within many of the niche gaming communities out there. But there are things with narrative and the experience of narrative that text adventures do in a way that no other genre, including visual novels, can, because text adventures are just about the text, and visual novels still have those visual elements to distract from the text. The experience of those two games is still very different. And Choices That Matter shows that even in 2021, text adventures as an experience can still be very relevant. Anyhow, that is enough for this video. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments. It would be great to hear from fans of text-based adventure games that have played these Choices That Matter titles, what they think of them. And to run through the usual end of video housekeeping, click the like and subscribe buttons if you're enjoying my videos so that you'll be able to keep catching them. And be sure to set up your notifications via the little bell icon so that you'll get a reminder every time I upload a new one. Please do consider backing me on Patreon too. You can do so for just $1 a month, and that money goes directly back into helping me expand what I'm doing here, so it is used in a way that benefits you as a fan of this channel. Finally, if you do enjoy visual novels and things, and text-focused adventures as such, please consider picking up one of the DD visual novels that I have produced. Not only will you get a new game to play, and I think they're pretty alright, but you'll also get to be directly supporting us that way with those visual novel purchases. So as always, thank you for watching. We will see you at the next one.